Welcome to the Reflective Minds. This is your host Monica with you today. Once again, today we are going to discuss the book as I was discussing with you, The Law of One. We have discussed so far the first density and the higher self. Today I am going to discuss the second density, and basically it talks about the organic life, plants, animals, and bacteria. That's what it consists of. Okay. As I have mentioned earlier, there are a lot of speakers who are discussing the law of one. Brian Scott has attuned my attention a lot recently, and he says the material in the books conveys an elaborate and grand reality, ultimately described as being called the law of one, or the basic principle that all is one, that all things that exist are ultimately the same essence within many forms and configurations. The philosophy of the law of one describes the big questions of life: why, how, and where everything that exists comes from, as well as its place within the manifest creation. The 5 books explore the premise in relation to many aspects of life, including philosophy, religion, spirituality, cosmology, anthropology, history, politics, physics, biology, geology, and the paranormal. So this is what Brian has described the book of Law of One in one single paragraph, you can say. There's one other speaker that is named Aaron Apke. Aaron is one of the best speaker, I can say, has described law of one in very unique way. He states that the beings which are communicating this message to us are social memory complexes from the planet Venus, and he calls them the pyramid builders because they have helped the Egyptians in the pyramid building theory or work. They have helped them. Because of their help, the Egyptians were able to build those pyramids. And it is also interesting that he describes that 4th density is serving others to gain greater love, 5th density is serving others by gaining self-knowledge, and 6th density serving others to gain perfect balance of love and wisdom. That's how Aaron has described them so far. There's one more speaker I have been listening to, following, you can say, dedicatedly, that is Aaron Doughty. He has also spoken about the law of one. If you are interested, you can find all these 3 speakers, and I will leave the links in the description below, so you can find them easily, and you can follow them, and you can find out more about more and different views about the law of one. Okay, having said that, we can start with our today's session. That second density, the questioners have asked around 22 questions here and their conversation. We will try to just see what they are talking about here. Okay, the questioner. Then there were second density entities here prior to the approximately 75,000 years ago. What type of entities were they? Ra, the second density is the density of the higher plant life and animal life, which exists without the upward drive towards the infinite. These second density beings are of an octave of the consciousness, just as you find various orientations of the consciousness among the conscious entity of your vibration. Okay, that's a self-explanatory. Okay, the next question is, did any of these second density entities have shapes like ours, like 2 arms, 2 legs, head, and walk upright on 2 feet? Now this is a very interesting question. The Ra says, I am Ra. The 2 higher of the sub-vibrational levels of the second density beings have the configurations of the bipeds, as you mentioned. However, the erectile movement which you experienced was not totally affected in these beings who were tending towards the leaning forward, barely leaving the quadrupedal position, that is on the 4 feet basically. That's what he is talking about. Then questioner says, where did these beings come from? Were they a product of evolution, or it is understood by our scientists? As it is understood by our scientists, were they evolved from the original material of the earth that you spoke of? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Next question, do these beings then evolve from the second density to the third density? I am Ra. This is correct. Although no guarantee can be made of the number of cycles it will take an entity to learn the lessons of consciousness of self, which are the prerequisite for the transition to the third density. Questioner, could you define what you mean by growth? I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the difference between the first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is characteristics of second density, the striving towards the light and growth. Questioner, by striving towards light, what do you mean by that? I am Ra. A very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards the light is that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. Questioner, then how does the second density progress to the third density? I am Ra. The second density strives toward the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. That's where we come in, okay, as a human. The striving takes place through the higher second density from who are invested by the third density beings with an added identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complexes, thus becoming mind-body split complexes and entering the third density, the first density of the consciousness of the spirit. So I guess that is a self-explanatory, but let me explain a bit more here. That is, the first density is only a consciousness, as we have discussed it in the first density. In the second density, it's a mind-body, okay, and the third density is a mind-body split complex. Like it's a combination of 3, combination of 3 things. Okay, questioner, going back over this morning's work, you said the second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms invested by the third density beings. Could you explain what you mean by this? Okay, I'm Ra. Much as you would put on a vestment, so do your third density beings invest or clothe some second density beings with self-awareness. This is often done through the opportunity of what you call pets. It has also been done by the various other means of investors. These include many so-called religious practices, complexes, which personify and send the love to the various natural second density beings in their group forms. When this earth was second density, how did the second density beings on this earth become so invested? Ra, there was not this type of investment as spoken, but the simple third density investment, which is the line of spiraling light, calling distortion upward from the density to density. The process takes longer when there is no investment made by the incarnate third density beings. Questioner, Then what was the second density form? What did it look like? That became Earth Man in the third density. What did he look like in the second density? Basically, this whole conversation is about like how the second density beings are transmuted or transferred into the third density beings. Okay, I am Ra. The difference between the second and third density bodily forms would in many cases have been more like one to other. In the case of your planetary sphere, the process was interrupted by those who incarnated here from the planetary sphere you call Mars. They were adjusted by genetic changing, and therefore there was some difference which was of a very noticeable variety rather than the gradual raising of the bipedal forms upon your second density level to third density level. This has nothing to do with so-called placement of the soul. This has only to do with the circumstances of the influx of those from that culture. So Ra is trying to say that third density beings did not transfer to second density beings did not transfer to third density beings. Rather, there was influx from the Mars. There were some beings which were shifted from Mars to Earth, and with some genetic changes, they come to being as a third density beings or humans, you can say. Questioner: let's take the point at which an individualized entity of the second density is ready for transition to the third density. Is this a second density being, what we call animal? Ra, I am Ra. There are three types of second density entities which become, shall we say, inspirited. The first is the animal, that is the most predominant. The second is a vegetable, most especially that which you call sound vibration complex, and tree. It's very interesting to note here that tree is being called sound vibration complex, because I have heard myself that trees can hear you. If you go to some trees and talk to them sweetly and lovingly, it is shown that they grow faster. And there is one tribe in Africa or somewhere, they don't cut the trees. They go to the tree. If they want to cut some tree, they go to that tree and start abusing it with the harsh words and angry words, and that tree finally dies off. So the term used here, sound vibrational complex, really reflects lets me connect to that concept, helps me connect to that concept basically. Yeah, that's interesting. These entities are capable of giving and receiving enough love to become individualized. Wow. The third category is mineral. Occasionally, a certain location, place as you may call it, becomes energized to individuality through the love it receives and gives in relationship to the third density entity, which is in relationship to it. This is the least common transition. This is very interesting. Like, it has divided the second density in the three categories. That is the animals predominant, then the vegetables or the plants, and the third is the minerals. Wow, that's interesting. Then the questioner asks, when this transition from the second to third density takes place, how does the entity, whether it be animal, tree or mineral, become inspirited? Now this is a good question, that like, as we see humans, that these things does not have, like mineral, vegetables and animals don't have spirits. Animals do have spirits, but trees also have, but to certain extent. Like, I have studied it in the sense that animals have four senses. Speaking is not there, right? And plants have three senses. As you go down, no, plants has two senses. Insects has three senses. I have studied it like this. So it is talking about how they are inspirited. Okay, Ra says, I am Ra. Entities do not become inspirited. They become aware of the intelligent energy within each portion, cell or item, as you may call it, of its beingness. Wow, that's interesting. So basically it is talking about the self-awareness, as we were saying that in third density we are working on our energy centers, and in the fourth density we have to refine our higher energy centers. In the same way, the entities in the third entities from second, when they are migrating from second to third, they are again working on the energy centers, which is it is calling intelligent energy. It is trying to know that yes, there is something called intelligent energy exists in them. That is a awareness, a very, like you can say, the least form of the awareness of the energy which they have. So the second density entities have that kind of knowing. So why we as a human don't have that kind of knowing that this is our ultimate power, this is our ultimate potential? We are so unaware of these powers, and nobody talks about these powers. Like, I have been like living for like years, but it's just now that I'm coming in contact with these kinds of details, and through this book and through these speakers that I'm coming to know about these theories, concepts, the energy, the potential, the self-awareness, the power of subconscious mind, the consciousness, the higher self, all these terms, these are very powerful. But as a human, we were not aware of these things. Maybe there's always a time in your life when you come to your self-awareness, you start awakening, the process which is happening right now on the earth. So if you are listening to this and you have been called upon this, then definitely you have to work on this. You are part of this. This awareness is that which is awareness of that already given. From the infinite comes all density. The self-awareness comes from within, given the catalyst of a certain experience, understanding, as we may call this particular energy, the upward spiraling of the cell or item or consciousness. You may then see that there is an inevitable pull towards what you may call eventual realization of self. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, when I have told you about the Aaron Abke, right? So I was listening to his video, and he said something very interesting which got my attention. He said that the creator himself, like he can do anything, okay, but what he cannot do is he cannot experience. So he created this whole world, whole universe, and through us, through all the beings which are living on the earth or anywhere in the universe or the galaxies, he is experiencing everything. The law of one talks about that this is whole is one. It has come from only one thing, and it will go back to only one thing. The whole universe is just one. Unity, the concept of unity. I just wanted to mention it here. It just came to my mind. Okay, the next question. Thank you. I don't wish to cover ground that we have covered before, but it sometimes is helpful to restate these concepts for the complete clarity, since words are a poor tool for what we do. Just as a passing point, I was wondering, on this planet, during the second density, I believe there was a habitation at the same time space of the bipedal entities and what we call the dinosaurs. Is that correct? I'm wrong. This is correct. Questioner. These two types of entities seem to be incompatible, you might say, with each other. I don't know. Can you tell me the reason behind both types of entities inhabiting the same space-time? I'm wrong. Consider the workings of free will as applied to the evolution. There are paths that the mind-body complex follows in an attempt to survive, to reproduce and to seek in its fashion that which is unconsciously felt as the potential for the growth. These two arenas or path of development being two among many. Okay. Now, questioner. Now, in the second density, the concept of the bisexual reproduction first originates. Is that correct? I am wrong. This is correct. Second density bisexual. That's good. Okay. Questioner. Can you tell me the philosophy behind this mechanism of propagation of bodily complex? I am wrong. The second density is one in which the groundwork is being laid for the third density work. In this way, it may be seen that the basic mechanism of reproduction capitulate into a vast potential in third density for service to other self and to self. This being not only by the function of energy transfer but also the various services performed due to the close contact of those who are, shall we say, magnetically attracted one to other. These entities thus having the opportunities for many types of services which would be unavailable to the independent entity. Okay. Questioner, does the process of bisexual reproduction or the philosophy of it play a part in spiritual growth of the second density entities? I am wrong. In isolated instances, this is so due to efficient perceptions upon the part of entities or species. For the greater part, by far, this is not the case in second density, the spiritual potential being those of the third density. Okay. When first density is formed, we have fire, air, earth and water. There is at some time the first moment of individuation of the life into a portion of the consciousness, that is self-mobile. Could you describe the process of creation of this and what type of energy center that it has? Ra, I am Ra. The first or the red ray density, though attracted towards the growth, is not in the proper vibration for those conditions conducive to what you may call the spark of awareness. As the vibratory energies move from red to orange, the vibratory environment is such as to stimulate those chemical substances which lately had been inert to combine in such a fashion that love and light begin the function of growth. The supposition which you had earlier made concerning single called cell entities such as the polymorph dinoflagellate is correct. The mechanism is one of the attraction of upward spiraling light. There is nothing random about this or any portions of the evolution. Questioner. As I remember, the polymorphs dinoflagellate has an iron rather than a copper based cell. Could you comment on that? I am Ra. This information is not central. The base of any metabolism, shall we say, that which may be found in the chemical substance of the neighborhood of origin. Questioner. Could you tell me the simplest and the first entity to have both orange and yellow ray energy centers? I am Ra. Upon your planetary sphere, those having the first yellow ray experience are those animals and vegetable natures which find the necessity for reproduction by bisexual techniques or who find it necessary to depend in some way upon other cells for survival and growth. Okay, that's interesting. So it is basically stating that yellow ray experience are like, as we know, there are two types of reproduction. One is a sexual and other is a bisexual. A sexual is like cell divides in two cells and then so on, so forth. And bisexual, you need two mates, like male and female, only then the reproduction can take place. So it is asking, like, what was the first being yellow, which has yellow ray experience. So it is saying the animals and vegetables which does need the bisexual reproduction techniques. We have seen, I have been a student of biology and I have seen that yes, there is like slow progression from the asexual to the bisexual. But I didn't know about this yellow ray experience in orange and yellow energy centers. I know the scientific background, but now it is connecting me to the spiritual background of this thing. This is very interesting. Question: well, then, would an animal in the second density have all the energy centers in some way in its being, but just not activated? I'm wrong. This is precisely correct. Okay. Question: did you state that second density was 4.6 billion? Is that correct? I'm wrong. That is correct. So, wow, that was very interesting. This was all the questioners and question answer session for the second density, and we have finished the second density, and it was very interesting to know that being in the second density had energy centers which were not that much evolved, but they were like gaining the consciousness that they have to evolve. But in the higher second density, they come to the realization, because after that they migrate to the third density. This is very interesting. Like this whole thing explains how humans become the humans what they are today. They have migrated from the first density to second to third density. That's what it is all talking about here. So friends, do let me know that how it was, and thank you so much for watching this. Hopefully see you in the next session, and we will be discussing third density, hopefully. For till then, take care. Have a nice day. Bye bye.